Sophie never imagined her marriage would end like this, over a misunderstanding fueled by gossip, miscommunication, and meddling relatives. Yet here she was, standing in the empty apartment she once shared with Michael, the papers of their divorce finalized neatly on the table, and a hollow ache in her chest. It had all begun innocently enough. A misinterpreted text, an overheard conversation twisted by her sister-in-law, and suddenly Sophie found herself questioning the man she loved. Michael had tried to explain, of course, but the constant interference from well-meaning relatives made every conversation feel like an uphill battle. Words were lost in translation, intentions doubted, and patience exhausted. "I just don't understand," Sophie whispered to herself, staring at the door she used to walk through together. "We loved each other. How did it come to this?" Friends tried to console her. "At least you're free," they said. "You deserve happiness. You'll find someone better," another offered. But their words rang hollow. Sophie didn't want freedom. She wanted understanding, clarity, and the life she had shared with Michael. Weeks after the divorce, Sophie immersed herself in work, taking over new projects and throwing herself into her career. Yet every time her phone buzzed, a tiny hope stirred that it was him. Michael, reaching out to explain, to apologize, to fix what had been broken. But it never was. Not at first. Meanwhile, Michael struggled too. The misunderstanding that had led to their separation weighed heavily on him. He hadn't stopped loving Sophie, and the knowledge that meddling relatives had manipulated their relationship made his heart ache with frustration and regret. He wanted to call her, to show her he still cared, but pride and the fear of rejection kept him at bay. One evening, Sophie attended a charity gala for her company, trying to immerse herself in a world that felt alive despite her broken heart. To her surprise, Michael was there, standing across the room in a tailored suit that made her stomach twist in ways she hadn't felt in months. Their eyes met. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. The room, the chatter, the music, all faded into background noise. Sophie's heart thudded in her chest, a mixture of old familiarity and lingering longing. Michael took a cautious step toward her. "Sophie," he said softly, almost a whisper. "Can we talk?" Sophie hesitated. Her mind flashed back to every hurtful word, every misinterpreted moment. And yet, deep down, she knew her feelings hadn't changed completely. I don't know if we can," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. He nodded, his expression a mix of regret and hope. "I understand. But I need you to know the truth, about what happened, about what I feel. Can we start there?" Sophie swallowed hard, emotions swirling. She wanted answers. She wanted clarity. And part of her, the part that had always loved him, wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end. As the night went on, they found a quiet corner to speak, away from prying eyes and judgmental glances. Michael began to explain, step by step, where the misunderstanding had begun, how her relatives' meddling had twisted the truth, and the lengths he had gone to prove his loyalty without causing further conflict. Sophie listened, her chest tight with a mixture of anger, hurt, and hope. The truth didn't erase the pain of the past, but it illuminated the path forward. By the time they parted that evening, a fragile possibility lingered. The possibility that love, though strained and battered, might yet find a way to bloom again. The days after the gala were a whirlwind of emotions for Sophie. Every time her phone buzzed, her heart leapt, half hoping it was Michael reaching out, half fearing it would never happen. She had told herself she was done, that the divorce was final, but seeing him again had stirred something she hadn't anticipated, unresolved feelings. At work, Sophie threw herself into projects to distract herself. Meetings, deadlines, and emails filled her day. But her mind kept wandering back to Michael. She remembered the way his eyes softened when he spoke, the warmth in his voice, and the familiarity of his presence. The anger that had fueled her initial resolve was fading, replaced by something more complicated. Michael, meanwhile, found it increasingly difficult to focus on his own life. Seeing Sophie had reminded him of everything he'd lost. He knew he had to tread carefully. One wrong word, one misstep, and she might retreat again. Pride warred with longing inside him, but love ultimately won out. He decided to reach out, sending her a simple message. "Can we meet? I owe you the truth about everything." Sophie stared at the message, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to ignore it, to maintain the distance she had fought so hard to preserve. Yet the curiosity, the hope, and the lingering love pulled her toward a single reply. "All right. Let's meet. They chose a quiet cafe, away from the familiar eyes of family and friends who had fueled the misunderstanding. The moment Sophie walked in, Michael stood, a nervous smile on his face. For a brief instant, they both froze, measuring the space between past pain and present longing. Sophie, Michael began softly, as she slid into the seat across from him. I know words can't undo the hurt, but I need to tell you everything, from the beginning. Sophie nodded, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. I'm listening, she said quietly. He explained patiently and earnestly how her relative's meddling had distorted the truth, how his attempts to shield her from conflict had been misinterpreted, and how every misunderstanding had been compounded by assumptions on both sides. As he spoke, Sophie felt her anger ebb, replaced by a bittersweet clarity. The past hadn't been simple. Love hadn't been absent. It had been suffocated by circumstance and miscommunication. After a long pause, Sophie spoke. So, all this time we let something so small ruin what we had? All these months, maybe years, lost. Michael reached across the table, brushing his fingers lightly against hers. Not lost, he said softly. Just delayed. We have a chance now, if we're willing to take it. Her heart ached with longing and fear. Could she truly open herself again after everything? Could she trust that the past wouldn't repeat itself? I don't know if it's that simple, she admitted. The feelings are still there, but the hurt, it's real. And I'm scared, Michael. He squeezed her hand gently. I know. And I'll take it slow. I just want the chance to show you that we can be better this time. Stronger, more honest, and truly together. As they left the cafe, side by side, Sophie felt a strange mix of hope and uncertainty. The path forward wouldn't be easy. The interference of relatives, lingering doubts, and old wounds would all need attention. But for the first time in months, she allowed herself to imagine the possibility of reconciliation, of love rekindled, and of unfinished feelings finally finding their resolution. For Sophie and Michael, the accidental divorce had been a painful detour, but it hadn't extinguished what they felt for each other. It was a reminder that sometimes love isn't about perfection. It's about persistence, understanding, and the courage to try again. The week that followed brought Sophie and Michael into closer contact than either had anticipated. A joint business meeting, a few chance encounters at family gatherings, and shared errands. Each encounter reminded them both that the connection they had shared hadn't disappeared. It had merely been buried under hurt, misunderstanding, and pride. Sophie felt a mix of excitement and anxiety every time she saw him. Her pulse quickened at the sight of his familiar smile, and yet she kept a careful distance, wary of letting herself fall too quickly. Michael, for his part, was determined to show her that things could be different this time. He was patient, attentive, and cautious, understanding that trust wasn't automatically restored. Every conversation, every shared laugh, every moment of silent understanding was an effort to rebuild the bridge that had once been burned. During one particularly tense afternoon, they were forced to work together on a charitable project for the company. Their proximity stirred a strange combination of old memories and new emotions. Careful with that, Michael said, leaning over to adjust a stack of papers on her desk. Their hands brushed, and Sophie felt an involuntary shiver. She looked up at him, her heart caught between longing and hesitation. I'm fine, she said softly, trying to steady her voice. But she didn't pull away entirely. Something in her told her it was safe, not yet completely, but safe enough to explore the feelings she had buried. As the days passed, small moments like this began to accumulate. Shared coffee breaks, casual conversations, and subtle gestures created an unspoken rhythm between them. They were learning each other again, not as strangers, not as exes, but as two people cautiously rediscovering the bond that had once been strong. One evening, while leaving the office together, a sudden rainstorm forced them under the same awning. They laughed at the coincidence, their shoulders brushing. The air between them was charged, a mix of electricity and unspoken words. Sophie, Michael said quietly, his eyes searching hers, I know this is complicated. And I know the past hurt you. But I can't keep pretending I don't feel this. Whatever it is between us. Can we try? Even slowly. Her chest tightened. The old ache, the lingering desire, and the hope that love might still exist combined into a heady mix. Yes, she whispered. We can try, slowly. Family interference, however, wasn't done with them yet. The next morning, Sophie received a message from her mother. Be careful. Your sister says Michael is still unreliable. Don't get hurt again. Sophie sighed, feeling frustration flare alongside a stubborn determination. She loved her family, but she had to live her own life. Michael had shown her sincerity, patience, and care. She wasn't going to let past meddling dictate her present or future. Later that day, she confronted him. I got a warning from my mom, she admitted. I know it comes from concern, but I need to trust myself on this. I need to trust you. Michael took her hands in his, eyes steady and sincere. I know, Sophie. And I'll earn that trust every day. I'm not perfect, but I'm here for us for now, for the future. For the first time since their divorce, Sophie allowed herself to imagine a life where they could navigate challenges together, where love and understanding could coexist with caution and care. That night, walking home side by side, the city lights reflecting on wet streets, Sophie realized that closeness wasn't just physical. It was emotional, built through patience, honesty, and shared determination. Every glance, every touch, every word was a step toward healing, toward love reclaimed. For Sophie and Michael, the accidental divorce had been a painful detour, but the road back wasn't impossible. And with each close encounter, each shared moment, they were learning that love, once genuine, could always find its way home. Sophie sat at her desk, staring at her phone, a familiar unease settling in her chest. The morning had started with a cheerful text from Michael, suggesting a casual dinner that evening, but now a message from her sister had thrown a shadow over her mood. Be careful, Sophie. Don't let him fool you again. You know how easily he gets distracted by work and appearances. Sophie's fingers hovered over the screen. She knew her sister meant well, but the words were laden with judgment and assumptions, a reminder of the meddling that had contributed to their divorce in the first place. Despite Michael's patience and sincerity, doubts, old and new, began to creep in. Later that day, Michael arrived at her office to drop off some paperwork for their joint charity project. He looked as composed and reassuring as ever, but Sophie couldn't help noticing the tension behind his calm demeanor. You seem worried, he said softly, placing the folder on her desk. Sophie sighed, rubbing her temples. I am. My family. They're still skeptical. They don't understand us. And sometimes, I start wondering if I'm making a mistake trying again. Michael knelt beside her chair, his gaze steady. Sophie, I know the past was messy. We both made mistakes, and we let outside influences get between us. But this time, it's different. We're aware, we're honest, and we're trying. That's what matters. Her heart softened slightly, but the doubt lingered. Trust wasn't rebuilt in a day. It was slow, deliberate, and sometimes painfully uncertain. That evening, they met for dinner. The conversation started lightly, filled with laughter and small anecdotes, but Sophie's mind kept returning to her sister's warning. Every pause, every silence, felt amplified. Finally, she addressed it. Michael, I want to trust you. I do. But I can't pretend that the past doesn't exist. How do we move forward when the people around us keep reminding me of everything that went wrong? Michael reached across the table, holding her hands gently. We move forward by remembering that the past doesn't define us, Sophie. We define us. And yes, there will be obstacles, family opinions, lingering doubts, outside pressures, but we face them together. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not asking you to be perfect. I just want us to try. Sophie felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. His words were simple, yet powerful. They acknowledged the difficulty of the journey while affirming his commitment. Slowly, the knot of anxiety in her chest began to loosen. In the following days, both Sophie and Michael took small but significant steps to counter the lingering doubts. They communicated more openly, shared daily thoughts and plans, and gradually created a shield against the meddling influence of relatives. Every shared moment of honesty and vulnerability became a building block for their renewed relationship. One afternoon, as they walked through the park discussing a charity event, Sophie paused and looked at him. I think I can trust again. Not blindly, but with my eyes open. With you. Michael smiled, relief and warmth spreading across his face. That's all I ask, Sophie. One step at a time together. That night, Sophie lay in bed, reflecting on the day. Doubts would always exist, but she realized that facing them didn't weaken her love, it strengthened it. Trust, patience, and understanding were the pillars on which they could rebuild what had been accidentally broken. And for the first time since the divorce, Sophie felt a flicker of hope that love, real, resilient, and enduring, might not only survive the meddling, misunderstandings, and doubts, but grow stronger because of them. The following weekend brought a welcome reprieve from work and family interference. Sophie had been invited to a friend's small garden party, and to her surprise, Michael was also attending. It was casual, light-hearted, the perfect setting to test the waters of their renewed connection. From the moment they arrived, Sophie felt a flutter of nervous excitement. The tension she'd carried for weeks seemed to dissipate slightly as they navigated the party together, sharing laughter, anecdotes, and the familiar ease that had drawn them to each other in the first place. At one point, Michael leaned toward her, a playful glint in his eyes. "Remember the last garden party we went to?" he asked. "You ended up covered in rose petals because you tripped over the hose." Sophie laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. "Oh no! Don't remind me. I was so embarrassed." "And yet," he said, smiling warmly, "you managed to turn it into the funniest moment of the evening. That's one of the things I love about you." Her cheeks flushed, a mix of embarrassment and pleasure. The old spark between them, the easy warmth, the playful connection, was undeniable. It had never truly faded. It had just been buried under doubt and misunderstanding. As the sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the garden, Michael suggested a walk through the nearby park. The air was filled with the scent of flowers, and the soft rustle of leaves created a tranquil backdrop for their conversation. "Sophie," he said gently, "I know we've had a rough start after the divorce, and I know the meddling and misunderstandings made things worse. But being here with you, it feels right. It reminds me why I fell in love with you in the first place." Sophie's heart ached with the memory of their earlier days together. "I feel it too," she admitted. "Even after everything, being with you, it feels like home. Like maybe we weren't meant to be apart for long." Michael reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. His touch was gentle, careful, yet it sent a shiver through her. "Then let's take it slow," he whispered. "One step at a time. But let's not ignore what's between us anymore." Sophie nodded, feeling the weight of months of doubt lift slightly. The spark between them was reigniting, stronger than before because it was tempered by understanding, patience, and a shared desire to protect what they had rediscovered. Over the next few days, Sophie and Michael began spending more intentional time together. Shared meals, evening walks, and quiet conversations became the norm. They laughed more, teased each other gently, and even discussed future plans. Not grandiose or pressured, but small, thoughtful steps toward rebuilding their life together. One afternoon, while preparing for a joint charity project, Michael handed Sophie a coffee with a cheeky smile. "For my favorite partner in crime," he said. Sophie raised an eyebrow, amused. "Partner in crime? That sounds suspiciously like flirting." "It is," he admitted, grinning. "And I plan to continue. Consider it practice for rebuilding trust." Her laughter rang out, warm and genuine. The playful banter, once absent from their relationship, had returned. It wasn't just the spark of attraction, it was the rekindling of a deep emotional connection, a reminder of everything they had shared and everything they could still share. That night, Sophie reflected on the week. The accidental divorce had seemed like the end of everything, but instead, it had become a detour that taught them both patience, understanding, and the value of truly seeing each other. The sparks between them were no longer fragile. They were alive, glowing steadily, fueled by the lessons of the past and the hope of a shared future. And for Sophie and Michael, the accidental divorce was slowly turning into an intentional, deliberate second chance, one they both were ready to embrace. Sophie thought the hardest part was behind them. She had begun to trust Michael again, their spark rekindled, and moments of laughter and quiet intimacy reminded her that love could survive even the most painful misunderstandings. But the past had a way of sneaking back when least expected. It started with a seemingly innocent phone call from her mother. "Sophie, darling, I just worry about you," her mother said, her voice tinged with concern and disapproval. "I know Michael seems sincere, but you've been hurt before. Are you sure you're not rushing this?" Sophie's jaw tightened. "Mom, I know you care. But I can handle my own feelings. I trust Michael, and I want to see where this goes." Her mother hesitated. "I just don't want to see you hurt again." Sophie took a deep breath. "I won't let that happen. We're careful now. Please, just let us live our lives. That afternoon, as Sophie recounted the conversation to Michael, he frowned. It's like history repeating itself, he said quietly. Family interference was what caused the divorce in the first place. I hate that it's coming back now. Sophie nodded, brushing a hand over his. I know. But this time, we're different. We've learned, we've grown, and we're stronger together. We can face it. And yet, the interference wasn't limited to phone calls. At a family gathering over the weekend, Sophie's cousin made a pointed comment about Michael's commitment issues, hinting at past mistakes and painting doubt into the conversation. Other relatives chimed in, some subtly, some overtly. Sophie felt the tension rise, the room buzzing with opinions and expectations. Later that evening, Michael and Sophie retreated to a quiet corner of the house. Sophie leaned against him, exhausted. Why do they keep doing this? She whispered. Because they care in their own way, Michael replied, holding her close. But their idea of care is misguided. They don't see the bond we're rebuilding, the trust we're creating. They only see what happened before. Sophie closed her eyes, letting the warmth of his presence calm her. I don't want to fight them. I just want to focus on us. On what we have now. Michael kissed her temple gently. Then that's what we do. We focus on us. We show them, and more importantly ourselves, that we're stronger together. Let their doubts be background noise. Over the following weeks, Sophie and Michael worked to strengthen their connection in ways that weren't just about words. They took small trips together, collaborated on personal projects, and created moments of joy and intimacy that reminded them why they had fallen in love in the first place. Each time a meddling comment or suspicious glance came from family members, they faced it together. They refused to let outside influence dictate their emotions or decisions. Slowly, they found a rhythm, a shared understanding that their relationship was theirs to nurture, and that love, when genuine, could withstand external pressures. One evening, as they walked hand in hand along a quiet city street, Sophie realized something profound. I don't think they'll ever completely stop interfering, she admitted. But that doesn't matter. What matters is us. What we choose every day. Michael squeezed her hand, a small smile on his face. Exactly. We've survived misunderstanding, doubt, and even a divorce. Family interference is just another obstacle we'll face together. And this time, we'll face it stronger. Sophie smiled, feeling the lingering tension of the day lift. Their love was no longer fragile or tentative. It was resilient, tempered by challenges, and ready to face whatever came next, family meddling included. For Sophie and Michael, the accidental divorce had been only the beginning of a journey toward understanding, patience, and a love that refused to be broken by outside voices. The sun dipped low over the city, casting a golden glow across Sophie's apartment as she prepared for dinner. Tonight wasn't just any dinner, it was the evening she and Michael had decided to set aside, away from family interference, work obligations, and the distractions of the past. Tonight, they would focus solely on each other. Her heart raced with anticipation. After weeks of rekindled sparks, lingering doubts and external pressures, they were finally at a point where the choice was clear. They could either retreat into old fears or step forward together. Michael arrived punctually, carrying a bouquet of her favorite flowers and a gentle smile. You look beautiful, he said softly, his eyes reflecting warmth and sincerity. Sophie blushed, feeling the familiar flutter in her chest. Thank you. You look calm and reassuring as always, she replied, a small laugh escaping her. They sat down at the small table, candlelight flickering between them, creating a cozy intimacy that contrasted with the chaos of recent months. For the first time since the divorce, nothing intruded, no meddling relatives, no misunderstandings, no doubts. Just them. Michael, Sophie began, taking a deep breath, we've been through so much. Miscommunication, family interference, and the pain of separating. But I've realized something important. I've realized that I still love you, and I want us to be intentional about this time together. Michael reached across the table, taking her hands in his. Sophie, I've never stopped loving you. Every step I've taken, even when we were apart, was to ensure that I could protect you, support you, and be ready to build a life together when the time was right. And now, I'm ready to choose you every day. Her eyes glistened with tears, not of sorrow, but of relief and joy. Then let's do it, she whispered. Let's choose each other. No more doubts, No more letting others control our story. Just us. They spent the evening talking about the future. Not in vague, distant terms, but with concrete plans, shared goals, and promises rooted in honesty and trust. They laughed at memories of the past, acknowledged the mistakes and misunderstandings, and envisioned a life built on mutual respect, patience, and love. Later, while walking home through the quiet streets, Michael stopped, taking both her hands in his. "Sophie," he said, his voice steady, "I want to make this official in every way that matters. Not because of anyone else, not because of appearances, but because it's us. Will you marry me again?" Sophie's breath caught. The words were simple, yet carried the weight of every trial, every heartache, every step they had taken together to rebuild their bond. She smiled through tears, squeezing his hands tightly. "Yes, Michael. Yes. Let's start fresh, together." In the weeks that followed, Sophie and Michael focused on celebrating their renewed commitment. Family opinions still lingered in the background, but they no longer dictated their choices. They had learned to communicate, to trust, and to shield their love from interference. Each moment together, from shared meals to quiet evenings, from laughter to deep conversations, strengthened the bond they had fought to reclaim. Their love, once fractured by misunderstanding and meddling, had transformed into something resilient and intentional. The accidental divorce, once a source of heartbreak, had become a catalyst for growth, understanding, and a deeper connection than either had experienced before. One evening, as they stood on the balcony of their apartment, watching the city lights sparkle below, Sophie rested her head on Michael's shoulder. "I never thought we'd get here," she whispered. "After everything, we found our way back." Michael wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "We did. And this time, we're stronger. We've chosen each other consciously, willingly, and with our eyes open. Nothing, no misunderstanding, no interference, can take that away." Sophie smiled, feeling the warmth of his embrace, the certainty of his love, and the peace that comes from knowing that hearts mended with care can thrive again. Together they had turned an accidental divorce into a deliberate, enduring love. A love built on trust, patience, and the unwavering choice to always choose each other. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more original novel stories. And stay tuned, our next story is coming soon.